Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, talking as always to Nick, the Sultan of Steel, the Miracle of McRae, the new Mizuno Iron owner, and whose ambience, if you're not watching on YouTube and you're just listening, Nick's outside on his deck at the minute with a beautiful winter's morning sun shining. I can see the reflection of the doggos having, what are they having there, Nick? A little treat, a little nibble on a bit of doggy jerky or something?
No, no, it's just a bone from the butcher.
Oh, classic. You gave the dog a
Yeah,
bone.
I did give the dog a bone.
I gave my dog a
It's
bone yesterday.
not good. I like them.
Dogs like bones.
Are you in a new office? Are you in your Dubai office at the moment? So Ryan, instead of the Sultan of Steel, you could be the Sultan of the Sand.
I'm just the
You are the
salty
salt.
tax-paying citizen of Australia.
You're salty, not Sultan.
Yeah, yeah. No, just before we pressed record, I was just whinging to Nico about a tax bill and saying that I'm going to move to Dubai and, exit this system. But I won't really. I'll just complain a little bit about it and then get over it.
Fair enough.
We
It's
tried to.
it's interesting, isn't it?
I spoke to my accountant a while ago because I had enough, and I'm like, can we set up because we're an online business? Can we set up an office in Dubai and just say that we're in Dubai? But no, you have to actually be residing there for the 0% business tax benefit. So
Mm.
no
Mm.
Dubai.
You could still go there and live there and set up there.
Yeah, I know. But now Tommy's at school. We've sort of set our roots here and all that. And
You bought a house and
damn family.
what a pain. Yeah, isn't it there's something called a flip of consciousness, and you can either look at the glass half empty or the glass half full. And people are like, "Oh, I've got a tax bill to pay," and then people are like, "Oh, what a privilege to that I've got a tax bill. That means business is going great, and I can afford all these nice things. And yeah, I have to pay this, but it's so typical that people go into that. And in the golf podcast we do, we're talking about there's so much in the sporting world now about pressure is a privilege, and it's everyone's trying to reframe it to go, oh no, this is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. I heard Alexander Volkanovski say that when he won the title back a few weeks ago, um, and all of that. So now I'll have my little whinge, and then I'll be over it by maybe lunchtime today. I haven't quite got all of the whinging out yet. I feel like I've got just a little bit more. I won't do it in the podcast. I'll vent it on someone else, but and then I'll be right.
Don't bring it tomorrow morning.
No, it'll be long. It'll be long
You-
forgotten
you-
tomorrow morning. Nick and I are playing Kingston Heath, one of the top golf courses, not just in the country but in the world, I would say. So we have a charity day very early. Like we're teeing off like sunrise time tomorrow, and I think it's just going to be a lovely day.
Mm. Um, and we don't want to taint it with tales of tax or tax evasion or um,
Or I'd love tales of tax evasion. If anyone's got some stories of that for me, I'll be like a dog with a bone.
um,
What's been happening, Nick?
the
What have you been up to?
oh, the podcast topic. There's been heaps. Like I had something in my head, and I'm like, this is great. Um,
Can I just start talking
but
about stuff and me?
You can, but the thought I had in the back of my head was to talk about space, and not outer space, but space, spaciousness.
How
So,
so?
well, yeah, because a lot of Myndfit work is based on Viktor Frankl's in between stimulus and response lies a space, and in that space lies your power to choose, and that choice lies your freedom. And I don't know, it's really interesting that new clients coming in at the moment, and a lot of them are just they've never heard of it. They've got no understanding that this space is available to all of us, and it's not space as in physical space from other side. I don't have to deal with anything. It's space from your thoughts. There was a beautiful meditation quote I read about meditation isn't to stop thinking. It's just to pause the story in your mind long enough for you to realize that your mind is always creating a story. So it gives you some space from it. Meditation, the Vipassana meditation, you sit and observe the sensations in your body. Often they're unpleasant because you're not moving a muscle. So there's tingling or whatever. And it's just having that space from them, not being reactive to them. Or it's receiving a tax bill and going, oh, right, I don't have to. I'm just using it because it popped up. And it's just, all right, I get to choose how I feel about this.
It's
So,
like
yeah, just
a term we use is we're Velcroed or we're glued to our thoughts and our emotions to a degree. And so if we're glued to them for the majority of our life, which most of us are because we're conditioned that way from an early age, then decades have passed. And so there's no awareness of that separation, I guess, until somebody comes in and does a discovery session with you or speaks with someone and who lets them know that there's other options of how they relate to themselves in the outer world where they, and I think it sometimes gets like, because we've been doing this for so many years, it's kind of interesting when someone comes in, they're like, what are you talking about? You know, how could I have space? Or what do you mean I'm not
I
my
had it.
thoughts?
I had it last night. I'm working with this wonderful young lady. She's 21 and just highly reactive. That's fucked. They shouldn't do this and they shouldn't do this. And I'm just sitting there listening and just tuned into to how disempowered she is, how much she's outsourcing her happiness and how reliant she is on complete strangers who will only be a fleeting part of her life to do something to fit within, her ego's parameters of preference or acceptance. And I said, how are you feeling? She's like, I'm just really agitated. I'm like, would you choose to be agitated if you had the choice? And she's like, of course not. I'm like, oh, well, we have the choice. She's like, I just can't see another path. I'm like, there it is. I just can't see the other path. I'm like, do you want me to show you? And she's like, yes. And then, I showed her on the whiteboard, constructive and destructive, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah. And so many people say, why aren't we learning this in school? Why aren't we being taught this at an earlier age? Why aren't we building stronger kids instead of fixing, in inverted commas, broken adults? Why does it take us so many years to take the blindfold off and have this space to this room to breathe? So,
It just takes
yeah,
so long. It's like it's just like turning around the Titanic, you know. It just I wish I learned that when I was 21 or even younger than that. But yeah, I certainly didn't. It took me much longer than that. And I think you know, it's at the minute it takes people like this girl who came into your office where it's of their own volition. So something's not working. Like, you know, I'm in suffering that I don't think is of my own making. I think it's everybody else's fault, but I'm still trying to work it out, you know, whereas, you know, to start teaching this kind of stuff in schools, like I hope it's not too far around the corner, but things are so slow. You know, one of the things we teach in our courses, it was the 1980s. It wasn't that long ago, but in the 1980s, before then,
it was in the
me-
late 1900s, wasn't it?
yeah, I guess so. When I was born, that's can't be that long ago.
You were
You know,
born in the late 1900s.
doctors in the medical industry didn't even recognize that babies felt pain at all. They thought children didn't feel pain, and so they would give them. And this is just it's just makes your skin crawl thinking about it. If they ever had to do an operation or surgery on an infant or a baby, they wouldn't even give them pain medication or anesthetic. They'll just give them a paralyzing drug, so they'd feel everything but just be paralyzed and have to stay there because they're like, oh, they don't feel pain. It's like that things like that make you realize how archaic so many of the ways we learn and teach and get taught in our society are. So, you know, 10 years ago, I thought all of this stuff that we talk about would be very mainstream and spoken about in schools and whatnot 10 years later, but unfortunately, it still isn't. So we mustn't be doing our job good enough, Nick.
I think we're doing our jobs just
We,
fine.
we
I
are,
just
yeah,
think,
we
as you
are,
said,
aren't we? Okay.
I think you said before, things just happen. Change happens incrementally. It's just, as you said, it's trying to turn the Titanic around. So, all we can do is our best, and that's what we're doing. But
Yeah.
for this young girl, it's this young girl to sit there and um, she was really stuck. She's trapped on this one level, and something I offered to her. I said, "Look, I agree with you. She's complaining about dangerous drivers and the weather and being bored at work and people at work not, you know, telling her what she wanted to hear and everything. I was like, all of that has to fit within these very narrow parameters. Like, so what happens when things happen outside of that? Your happiness is now at the behest of everything that's beyond your control. And I said, on this level, I agree with you. Wholeheartedly agree with you. Yes, there shouldn't be dangerous drivers. Yes, we should know that children and babies experience pain. Yes, they should tell you what you want to hear when you want to hear it. But that's not reality. That's a preferred reality that exists only in your head. And that's where the root cause of your suffering is, and your suffering only exists in your head. No one else knows that you're feeling anguish because they're not fulfilling your desires. So we can't just stay on that level. We've got to get down below it into the reality of what is, and it's just, is it outside the realms of possibility or probability that there's going to be dangerous drivers? Everyone is on a spectrum. There's going to be drivers that are better than you. Like you're in a real dangerous position where you say, "Oh, there shouldn't be dangerous drivers," because I'm sure as shit you've probably done something, you've braked a bit too late or whatever. So, there's this spectrum of drivers. And I showed her, I said, if you need everyone to be at this end, then it's going to be pretty crammed in there.
Imagine if she actually was the greatest driver in the world and you didn't know.
I know that'd be brilliant. That'd be so awesome.
But there's
She'd
also
call it this.
there's a thing at play there. We do a lot of parts work and what we do and everything. And so there's like the agitated part. So say there's an agitated version of Ryan. And so it becomes a dominant part of my personality. Like it was for this girl. And so the whole, I guess, purpose of the agitated part is to remain agitated. So it wants to keep perpetuating the cycle and it wants to be agitated. So those small parameters that we set that are go, okay, I don't want only these can happen, anything outside of that, and I'm going to become agitated. Even if we have those days where everything's ticking the box, the agitated part it'll search and it'll find something. And, someone might walk past us in the street and we're like, oh my God, they were just greasing me off. How dare they, piece of shit? They might have had an itchy nose and didn't even notice that you were anywhere. But the agitated part wants to keep perpetuating itself. And this ties back to how it started, if we're glued to it and Velcro to it and don't have space, we can't go, oh, I have an agitated part of myself really active right now. We just are that. We're lost in it. We're drowning in agitation and nothing else.
That's what I shared with her. There's a space between our awareness and our thoughts and our feelings and our actions and all those parts of us. And there's the experience of life, and there's the observation that we are experiencing life, and we call it the eye behind the eye. And her mind was just like, "What do you mean? That's it's such a foreign concept, and it's going to take her time to get her head around this and try and free herself from just that one plane, that ego sort of surface level plane where this preferred reality, or the reality of what would, could, or should ideally be happening if I was in charge. You can hear the illusions of grandeur there, but if it was done my way, it would be perfect. And she's going to take her a while to unseat herself from that and come down into this relative. All right, yeah, it's not ideal, but it also that's the world we live in. That's what can I do? I can become a driving instructor, and I can play my role and try and teach people how to not drive dangerously. Or, that's going to be far more productive for her and the world instead of just "Meh, meh, meh."
Yeah, it's like we deal with ourselves before we deal with the situation. Because all we're doing really in that moment is we're just dealing with ourselves. We're just reacting to something and we're just trying to make that disturbance go away. And we'll do that by any means possible, whether it's like yelling at other people, making them wrong, telling them they're wrong, or trying to manipulate them and all that kind of thing. But if we deal with our own internal landscape, it's like then we can take a deep breath and go, what, if anything, needs to be done here? But we have to accept that, like you said, accept that reality is unfolding before us before we choose. I think in most instances, not much needs to be done. But then the things that we do choose to do, it comes from a much clearer space than one of just the agitation trying to get angry at people. And because it's like an annoyed part. It's like a belief that everyone and everything's annoying, and then it's seeking confirmation bias to show that it's correct with its evidence. So, like you said, there might be 98 really great drivers on the road and two that are driving a bit dangerously, but then the mind just fixates on those two that are driving dangerously instead of going, oh my God, you see that person over there, let that person in and they gave each other a wave. We just don't even let it in consciousness.
So that's, in Myndfit terms, that's a cognitive distortion. That's disqualifying the positives or the great drivers and is getting hyper focused on that. And that's because there's no space there, and that's where the self-management isn't available. People can't regulate because they're in that reactive heightened state, primarily anxiety. And the nature of anxiety is a controlling and manipulating nature. So it's going to try and forcibly change the outside world through yelling at it or through, um, you know, grabbing the steering wheel and pulling on it or through whatever means possible. It's going to try and alter out there to placate the preferences and desires that we have.
Yeah. I remember
It's
I
not going to work.
when I was like 18 and it's just triggering a memory. I remember I had my license and I was on the way home one night from I don't know where. Anyway, there was one of those roads where, two lanes becomes one. And there's,
Mm.
I felt like I was a little bit,
Zip merging. I've
yeah, and
learned it's called zip merging.
okay, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, we
So,
were zip
yeah,
merging.
one, then the other, then the other, then the other. Yeah.
And so my bond, I was a little bit in front of the guy next to me. So I'm like, oh, I'll take the initiative and go in. And then he didn't like it and tried
Mm.
to get in anyway. I got in front of him and then I ended up in a high speed car chase. This guy was like following me around the streets of Muralbach and I was fanging trying to escape and he was after me. And like after about 15 or 20 minutes of this, I pulled into a court and I thought I lost him and he ended up finding me and he just pulled up next to me and, oh, you fucker. And I'm like, well, and he drove off. And I'm like, oh, looking back now, I'm like, it's just that's so unnecessary on both of our fronts, to be honest. But that just shows, how distorted people can get. And it's not that. It's not just that. Like, I'm sure that me, in his opinion, cutting in front of him, that's not the source of that much anger and disturbance. It's like there has to be a lot of anger and disturbance in the first place that is ready to spill out.
The source of suffering is attachments and ignorance. So, in that example, he was he had an attachment. He had an aversion to you getting in front of him, or a desire to be in front of you, and it's the same thing. But he was also ignorant. He didn't know that in your head you're going, "Oh, I'll just take the initiative here, and I'll just pop in front of this guy, and just to save any sort of potential misunderstandings or whatever." So, here you are just trying, and so that's your reality. And his reality is, this prick's coming in front of me, and
Bloody
bro,
P plater, they're so
yeah,
disrespectful.
it's probably fucking full of meth or something.
I was probably
And
pumping my 6x9s and my subwoofer. My Sony explodes.
so it's fascinating. It's so
I spent 4
interesting.
grand on the car and 4.5 grand on the stereo. Classic 2000s.
And you sound so proud of it.
I am. I definitely am.
Um, that's this is the beauty. It's all perfect. This is human nature, and we can't have peace on earth until we have peace within ourselves. People just struggle to be content. Our primary nature is what we call a Buddha nature. It's loving kindness. So imagine if there was an alien race visited the Earth and had a magic wand or whatever, and all of a sudden everyone's ego was just sucked out of existence. Right? No one had an ego. We would literally all be walking around in loving compassion, loving, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, just this really um, connected, integrated sort of existence or experience. But because we've got these egos that
What would happen though?
uh,
What would happen if would we just lie in a field and die? Like what?
no,
Well,
I
no.
don't.
Would we
I
be
don't
like
know,
a
but
hive mind of ants or something? Or bees?
in my mind, I think we'd still do the same thing, but it'd be very different. There'd be no greed. There'd be no race. And we wouldn't be in competition with one another. It'd be,
Would there be any drive to do anything?
yeah, there's still a sense of survival. There's still an innate self-preservation sort
Yeah.
of thing. We still need to farm. We need to grow food. We need to
And we
wear
would share
clothes,
that
and
because you are me and I am you.
yeah, and it'd just be a yeah, I don't know, but in my head it'd be a very very different experience.
Maybe
There
that's the
wouldn't be
solution. Maybe
war.
the aliens will come before this education gets into schools.
Just give the whole world an egoectomy.
Egoectomy. They'll coat hanger up the schnozzer, pull it out. That's another one. Lobotomies. When did well, it's like lobotomies like it's not that long ago that the last lobotomy took place.
Well, when we say it's not that long, the 80s, in 5 years, the 80s will be 50 years ago.
1967 was the last lobotomy. Yeah, well, look. What, so say that again. It'll be 50 years.
In 5 years' time, it'll be 50 years since the 80s.
1980 you're talking about.
Yeah, 1980. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, okay. Anyway, you were about 30 back then, so
I was about to say emotionally, I'm like, no, actually, I didn't emotionally mature until I was 30.
yeah,
So,
okay. Yeah, yeah.
so imagine space. Imagine having I've seen some clients lately, and the partner of a client will come in for a session, and you know, and there's just so much conflict and angst and tension and misunderstanding. There's no space just to sit and observe and watch the people that we love. We're not in our hearts anymore, or very often. And I've seen a relationship end recently, disintegrated. And what we've since learned is that when they moved in together, their egos took over and moved in. And it's like, oh, you can't do that. Why are you doing it that way? That doesn't go there. Da, da, da. And it's all me versus you. And the sort of love that they were experiencing, they stopped being in a state of love, and they were in a heightened state. And yeah, using a destructive approach. And we're like, okay, well, no wonder the relationship ended. You weren't nourishing it. You weren't nourishing each other. You were trying to change and manipulate.
Trying to
Um,
win. That's a big one.
yeah,
Trying to win and
yeah.
be right and all of that. And if we do, like I think if we ever come into the heart, it's a protection of the heart, not an open heart. And
But
so
the heart can't be hurt. Like it's just filled with love, as far as I understand it. Em was talking to me this morning about something she had going on, and she's trying to transition out of work, and she's just really sort of struggling to get out of myotherapy and into the somatic healing, and it's taking a long time to try and shift out of it. And I just kept hearing all these limiting beliefs, and she kept finding all these obstacles and barriers, and this is why I can't do it, and et cetera, et cetera. And in the moment, my response was, yeah, but that's just your mind creating all these barriers. If you could look at it this way, or just take a step, stop thinking. You're getting paralysis of analysis. Just it's like climbing a mountain. You can stand there and the mountain's too big, and you'll never ascend it and get the view from the top. And you just take a step. And then she ducked off and did something, and I did my thing. And I was sitting with it, and I'm like, how? I just did some self-assessment. Like, how did I turn up for my relationship and my partner then? And I thought I could have maybe have done better. I get where I was coming from, but I don't know how beneficial that was. And I was, this is a big thing. Being right isn't more important than how people feel.
yeah,
So technically, being right, from a psychoanalytic perspective or whatever, but that's not more important than how she was feeling. So I sent a text to her saying the most important thing is that you feel supported. If you want to get a job, I'll support you in that. If you want to stop doing Myo completely, I'll support you in that. If you want to convince yourself of all the reasons why you can't do somatic therapy, I will do better and support you with that. Even though I find it very difficult, as my instinct is to go into work mode and challenge that type of thinking. But you're not a client, you're my partner, so I'll sit and listen from now on and you get it out of your system.
Mhm.
And she responded, "Thank you," and that opened up a lovely conversation. But
So you
that's
maybe in that moment maybe didn't have the space in the moment. You weren't being destructive or
no.
rude in any way, but you then later on you were able to reflect, and I think that's part of having the space is being able to sit down and reflect on an interaction, especially with those that we love. And
Well,
then if
I
you're
th I
deciding
th
that you can do better, because on this, most people get into a habit of they could have even a really bad interaction, but then just they go on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and there's just no reflection done. Nothing gets resolved, and resentment builds up in a relationship over time. So I'm just saying this is an incredibly important thing, especially in a relationship.
and I didn't beat myself up, with that reflection, which a lot of people would. Ah, fuck up, I failed. I did the wrong thing. I'm sorry, but then that's still making it all about them. I did the wrong thing. Yeah, I felt there was a bit of space there. I felt I was like, I chose my approach in that moment. I was sort of conscious and present, but there was a bit of that, um, work coming through as well. Going, all right, well, I can hear the distortions here. I can hear the disqualifying the positives. I can hear the blah 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 blah. And it's upon reflection, I'm like, that can't be the priority. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is how M's feeling, and that's where I need to. That's what I need to prioritize.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
So,
love that. I love
yeah.
that.
So I had that space with myself, and then I had that space. And there's no ego involved in it. There's no, I did it right or wrong or good or bad. There's no judgment or criticism or anything. It's just a gentle awareness, and that's what's available when we have that space.
And have you found with the process yourself, if we stick with the ungluing or the pulling apart of the Velcro, it can often be a gradual process, like it might be with this new client that you have, where, we learn like, okay, maybe I don't have to get so involved in all my thoughts and everything, and I can watch them. And we can have moments where we have that inner space and we can sit with the situation really objectively and go, oh, wow, this is such a better way of relating to life. But then we get glued again, for a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, and then we unglue, and then we glue, we unglue, and it's sort of I found it's a gradual process with moments of real, I guess, confirmation along the way. Like let's say someone is having a discussion with a partner or a boss or a friend or something, and afterwards they're like, "Holy shit, I actually wasn't affected as much by their words or what my mind was saying," and they sort of create that inner space. So I'm just saying, in your experience, does it go from a 0 to 100, or is it much more of a gradual thing?
This may sound weird and it's a bit metaphysical, I suppose, but I think it's dependent on whether the person's a young or an old soul.
Right?
I've seen I've seen 21-year-olds come into contact with this, and use your terms, that they've unglued really quickly. The blindfolds come off, and it's like bang. It's just like they've just been waiting for this. I reckon they've done it in previous lifetimes or whatever. For young souls, it's a very gradual process. It's their first contact with it, I suppose, in this lifetime. So it's like, oh no, I've got to really. There's nothing. There's no prior experience in past lives to for it to connect with or to resonate with. So it's the first time around, I suppose.
What about the
If you want to get
idea
out,
that it's harder for older people, let's say, because maybe they have
no,
the
no,
deeper neural
I've
pathways?
well, that's what I mean. I've seen old people, older people. I remember recently this woman came in and she just, it was like she was waiting 65 years just to have this offered to her, and then it's just gone bang, you know. Um, and I'm just like, and I had the exact thought. I'm like, yeah, that sort of blows that theory out of the water that
Yeah, okay.
old dogs can't learn new tricks, so to speak. I think that's probably typical. I think it's probably par for the course. I think she's probably an exception. Um, but yeah, just sitting there watching him, age is becoming less and less of a factor. It's more. That's why I refer to past lives or whatever. I don't know what it is, but it's deeper down. It's like people are either very aligned with it and they, open up really quickly, or it's we're planting the seed for the first time. So it's going to take a bit longer.
Take a bit longer to germinate.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating either way. So um, yeah, but the important thing is that people are turning up, and whether it's happening fast or slow, that's sort of irrelevant. It's the fact that you're doing it is the important thing.
Yeah, and sometimes I find
And yeah,
slow. You go finish, you go.
oh yeah, but slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Slow can be much more beneficial at times. But as I said, there's instances where it's just blown the roof off, and it's happened, and all of a sudden this. What was that TV show in the 80s where the dude walked into the phone? It wasn't Superman. He walked in the phone booth and walked out. It was like a sitcom. And believe it or not, I'm walking on air or something. The
Was it a cartoon or not?
No, it was a American sitcom. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
Oh no, I only know that from
Probably before your
George
time.
Costanza's answering phone, but that was before my time.
Right. Anyway, it's like people walk into the booth and walk out with this new superpower. And that's how people refer to this spaciousness. It's like a superpower. It's like time stands still, and all of a sudden I've got access to all of these options, or I can just be very mindful or conscious or deliberate. So that's just such an empowered um, place to be positioned in. I'm just content. I'm not, there's no disturbance. Nothing. It's not good or bad. Nothing's happening to me at the moment. It's just I'm just meeting. I've met it, and I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to sit with it for a bit and see what happens.
Do you ever get clients that have like a little period after this where it's kind of like a slap in the face? Because I've had ones where they'll have this realization, then they'll come back a week or two later and be like, oh my God, I'm just seeing all the areas of my life now where I make myself angry, I make myself sad, I put myself in an anxious state. And it's kind of like we kind of, the curtain's been pulled back, and we're like, oh my God, I've been orchestrating 99% of my own suffering for the last 3 decades.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I said it in the podcast or not, but a beautiful example of that was with a plumber in Queensland. And every session, I asked how you feeling, and then about week 5 or week 6, he said, I'm feeling what's he say? He goes, I'm realized I'm more fucked than I thought I was. Um, and because we had a laugh about it. He goes, I'm just with this self-awareness, I can see how destructive I've been. I've seen how I just haven't been behind the wheel. I haven't been making many decisions. I don't know. He goes, I don't know how I'm still standing. I don't know how like I just have not been present in my own life. Um, and so yeah, he sees how much unnecessary suffering he's created, and then he comes in and goes, everyone's doing it. Yes, I looked at all my mates now, and everyone's doing it. And he goes, it's fucking everywhere, Nick. I'm like, yeah, it really is.
It's an epidemic, has been for hundreds of years.
Hey, interesting, our young girl this week, one of our adolescent program participants, she had an interesting session this week where she was like, oh, I said, how are you feeling? She said, I'm feeling a bit detached. I'm like, oh, what a wonderful word. Like, unpack that a bit. And she can see how much suffering her friends are. I'm just not attracted to the drama. I'm just really not interested in the talking about people behind their back and everything. So I'm not sure how to do. So I'm just sort of stepping back. And so we had this beautiful conversation about how do we coexist with people that we love, our friends and family that aren't doing the work, that have sort of got the blindfold on, and how do we remain connected to them. And I said, it's just like you just trust the law of nature. Trust that sometimes you're going to feel close and sometimes you're going to not feel close to them, but you trust the relationship will be, the tide comes in, the tide goes out. I said, if their ego comes looking for your ego to play with and to have this pity party with, and your ego's not turning up, their ego's going to get bored and wander off and find another ego to play with. And that's going to happen. That's got nothing to do with you. That's just kind of doing the work. Um, so yeah, she felt a lot better at the end of that session with that understanding of sort of what tends to happen.
Yeah. It's such an interesting, I think, age to be learning that as well, because you're in a like the guts of your socialization phase of your life where you're trying to work out where do I fit in. Social groups are everything, social connections are like number one on the value structure. But at the same time, now I've learned all this stuff and I have this inner spaciousness, and I'm realizing maybe I don't want to be around the energy of some people. That could be tough. So I get where she's coming from.
Very tough.
Whereas, like, people learn
And
that
a lot of
later
the
in
time,
life, when we're outside of that socialization phase, it can be easier because we're like, well, I don't fucking want to hang out with those people and I do these, and you set pretty strong boundaries around it. But I guess it would be harder in that earlier stage.
and I explained a lot of the time, part of this is that relationships do drop off. Yeah, naturally. You do sort of outgrow or evolve or just drift naturally or whatever. There's never really a catalyst. It just happens really organically. I've had a lot of clients say that they've started hanging out with older people, like much older, like um, 60, 70-year-olds. They're going to volunteer and just having cups of tea with these because there's a lack of drama with a lot of them. They've used up all their fucks and they've just arrived at this place where it's actually quite peaceful now. Not always. You can see some very bitter and twisted older folk in the community, but yeah, it's just really interesting to. And you said before that you've had clients that they come back and like it's everywhere, but the blindfold does keep coming on. It can fall on our version of that is you get kidnapped by your ego. You stop being conscious. And that's par for the course. I will get kidnapped by my ego. Sometimes it happens much less than it used to, and for much shorter periods of time. And my recovery period from it is much better. But yeah, none of us are immune to it. It's a parcel of this human experience, I suppose. So when it happens, we have enough space to observe that that's happened and to be kind to ourselves in the moment, to be compassionate, empathetic, and understanding of ourselves and our experiences and go, all right, well, I've still got work to do.
Yeah.
And
And then
that's
like you
it.
said, catching it as well. Like instead of, not catching it all or taking 3 weeks to catch it, it's like an hour later we can go, okay, I see who was in the driver's seat there. We'll sometimes do it. Me and Mal will be in the middle of an argument. It's like, what's actually going on here? I'm like, well, my ego's been hurt and I feel, less than. This is why I'm trying to puff my chest up and get angry at you.
I literally said to him the other day, dude, that's my ego's name. I said, dude wants to tell you that da 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 da. And and because I'd framed it that way, she knew it didn't activate her ego. She was like, oh, yeah, I can understand why he'd want to say that. And so it left space in. But when I don't catch that or when we miss that, and we start falling into the conflict in that wrestling match, I'm much better now going, can you feel that? I'll just
Mm.
pause, whatever it is, because we're trying to win the argument or conversation or whatever. Can you feel that? She's like, feel what? I'm like, are you feeling any heat at the moment? Are you feeling any tightness? Are you feeling? And she's like, oh yeah, yeah. And I'm like, that was close. All right, let's just go away from that. Let's take a step back and get that space back again, and not distance from each other, but let's get back into our hearts. And all right, is what you were trying to say really important? My response wasn't. What do you actually want to focus on here? And it just opens up a whole completely different conversation.
Yeah, it's like the egos can still be there, but instead of two egos battling, there's more at play. There's two egos there, but then there's also the self, if you want to call it that, is engaged as well. And that's why I love saying, "Oh, dude wants to say this." She's like, "Yeah, well, my ego wants to fucking say this."
Yeah, and that's that eye behind the eye. That's the conscious awareness that I am Nick, and part of being Nick is that I have an ego called Dude, and Dude wants to get busy sometimes. He wants to get involved, and you know, and
Wants
that's
to
for
insert
me.
himself into the equation.
He's up psycho, and he that's got another name.
Yeah.
Um, that's
What's
that's
that like
that's
the
doing
your
the
first pet name and the street that you grew up in? Is it that kind of name?
that's your DJ name, I think. Uh, um, but all those examples, that's doing the work. That's right. Understanding that egos create contraction and separation and segregation. So doing the work is just maintaining that space. We're in our hearts. Great. I wonder how long we can stay here for. You know, reality is we're not going to stay in our hearts permanently. Everything ebbs and flows. So don't form a desire to stay in there because that's going to create the opposite and get you out of your hearts really quickly. But just be in them and okay, reality is we're in our hearts, we're feeling close and connected. And I have an understanding that at some stage, one or both of our egos are going to want to try and take over and bring us out of our hearts. And when that happens, then we'll just turn up for ourselves in that moment and make the corrections and adjustments and with it not reactively but very mindfully.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's like it's better to pay attention or become aware of what takes us out of our heart or closes our heart because life will open it. Like life presents us with many opportunities to open our heart. But then, so it's like I might be driving along and see this beautiful sunset and I'm like, oh my God, that's fucking amazing. And my heart's open, I feel connected. And then someone cuts me off in traffic, back to the traffic example, and I'm like, you piece of shit. Then it's like, if I can have that inner spaciousness that you're talking about, then I can go, hang on, is this worth me closing my heart over? Like I was feeling great. I thought the world was a beautiful place just because this person changed lanes in front of me. Like I'm doing that. It's like you're talking about with your clients. Like, is this worth me closing my heart over? And you'll realize that 99% of things, no, no, it's not.
We'll see how long we can stay in our hearts tomorrow playing Kingston Heath.
All right.
Or
What
if
about when you're
you
5 over through five? Are you going to be open-hearted still?
did you hear your ego then? Just jump
My,
into the
I'm
driver's
just going to
seat.
let you know my ego is going to be there tomorrow. It's going to have a great time. It's going to have a great time.
All right. Well, I'll see how long I can stay in my heart for tomorrow,
I can do both.
and
I'd have cohabitation. I cohabitate the ego and the heart at the same
yeah.
time.
Okay. Wonderful. I can't wait to see that in action.
All right. Just a shout out as well before we wrap up today. We had an in-person event with the Center for Healing a couple of weeks ago, and all jokes aside, because I did send Nick some pictures of the event. Which do you want to fill them in, Nick?
No, no, I don't.
Okay. Anyway, but just a shout out. I met someone there in person for the first time, not online, but and they were helping out, and it was before I even got into the event, and they're bloody making me cry because they said they gave me a hug and just said if it wasn't for coming across you and Nick on the podcast and then finding the Center for Healing, I wouldn't be here today. And so shout out to that
Oh,
person. You'll know who you are listening to this, and
I won't. I won't, but I don't need to. I just
no,
need to know that you exist, and thank you for existing.
yeah, and you do though you do know this person. I'll tell you off air. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So shout out to everyone
Beautiful.
listening. Shout out to everyone, doing the work, staying on the path. Can you find that inner spaciousness, see how you go with that. Don't be too hard on yourself and yeah, be kind to yourself and other people.
Boom. Love it.
Yeah, everyone.